Uploading.
How Scientology extorts its money and the myth of confidentiality. One of the most overlooked and missed methods by Scientology to extract funds from persons and to be complacent in the crimes committed by its members is through a set of mechanisms established for decades, but thinly veiled and obscured through complications surrounding confidential information provided by Scientologists about Scientologists and also non-Scientologists. The matter has been raised before, but a technical detail of the mechanism is often overlooked and misconstrued by skeptics as being part of the ethics cycle of Scientology, when in fact it is a mixture and abuse of the auditing and confessional technology of Scientology. One must ask, how would a church obtain information about an individual and yet rather than go to the police, instead opt to use this information for extraction of money, while at the same time having culpable deniability of the acts themselves? In the easiest form of this, we understand that auditing itself is confidential, and yet it is also not. The church can claim that acts committed by the person are covered under the confidentiality clause, and as such, without further investigation, the claims are corralled into this category, and the church's insistence of unusable knowledge is protected. However, this overlooks the actual mechanism at play and how, in fact, the church almost always comes into possession of such crimes in such a way that they are legally able to act, and yet do not. But how? Firstly, the Scientologist in question almost always reveals the matter during an auditing session, thus providing the basis for the protection. However, this is where the truth of how Scientology actually comes into possession of the information it may use now becomes apparent. The auditor may write a knowledge report on the Scientologist, and it also does not need to name the crime in question. The case supervisor may also note the contents of the session as raising alarming claims, and may order what is known as a rudimentary check. Subtly overlooked and often forgotten is that a Scientologist, when placed onto the e-meter for auditing, will always be asked first questions relating to rudiments, these being rudiments necessary to actually begin the session. The session has not started, and nor has the privilege of confidentiality. As an example, an auditor may state to a Scientologist, "We are going to fly your rudes," which means we are going to ask questions because these appear to be charged areas and may affect the quality of the auditing session. So let us take an example of a person. This is a real-life example of a member who's admitted under auditing having raped and had sexual relations with their own daughter. The auditor and ethics officer are aware of this, and they could order a security check making that person admit it, but instead they want the information released freely to them and not under duress. As such, the ethics officer and case supervisor ask for rudiments to be flown, which may include questions such as, "In our last session, did you not fully state all the facts of an incident?" Or, "Is there anything about our last session that isn't fully disclosed?" Such questions are purposefully done for the purpose of having the person discuss the matter in a way that is not actually in a session. As such, the auditor is now free to write a knowledge report. The knowledge report travels to the ethics officer, who can now act legitimately on the report as it has now been discussed outside of session. Almost always, these identical actions take place before each of the upper operating thetan levels. During operating thetan 6 and 7, a person is actually required to self-process themselves in ethics. The result is always the same. The person is assigned lower conditions, and as part of the lower conditions must write by hand the overts and withholds they are withholding, their crimes. At this stage, it is allowed for an ethics officer to review any and all information the person has revealed in a security check or a rudimentary check. If the overt and withhold write-up does not contain the identical information that they already know of, then they are permitted to reject the person's lower conditions until they do admit to all overts and withholds not previously disclosed to an ethics officer, which means that the ethics officer now knows all matters discussed and disclosed in session. Moreover, when a person does their lower conditions, a set of these records, a copy of this, is added to the auditing file for review by the case supervisor, who may now review the auditing session, and if they know that the Scientologist hasn't admitted to all the things revealed in session, that such conditions can and will be rejected until they confess. And now we come to the extortion. When as in several real-life examples where Scientologists have admitted to rape, murder, theft, embezzlement, etc., the ethics officer usually asks them, as a part of their lower conditions, to make up the damage done. And it's often suggested that confessing to the company or the person that has been wronged would be required. Such an offering creates a severe reaction in the person, and they are then given another choice: donate to the International Association of Scientologists. Outside of the main events Scientology holds, almost all sizable IAS donations are made as a result of the person being assigned a lower condition and being asked to make up the damage done by an act that is the greatest good. Any review of a person's ethics files and lower conditions will almost always coincide with a large IAS donation. Note that, as the person has made up the damage done, they are now square in the eyes of Scientology. There is now no further need to go to the police. Any Scientologist guilty of a crime has almost always admitted to Scientology in a means outside of auditing, and the church was able to act, and did, by extorting large sums of money, rather than going to police. Any study of their donation history will almost always coincide not with their auditing schedule, but with their ethics schedule and conditions. It should also be noted that the confession of someone else having committed a crime in a session does not provide protection for the other person, and a knowledge report can be written on them. Thus, the idea of anything being protected in a session is almost always a myth. And moreover, the method of fund extractions from Scientology and Scientologists is almost always missed as being a payoff to avoid ethics considerations and not related to impulsive whims to donate suddenly.
You know what to do. Like, share, and follow. Please and thank you.